Hello, I'm Kimberly Ruiz, and I am the librarian at Great Beginnings Early Education Center, and I also support Lee Summit Parents as Teachers program. Today, I'd like to talk to you about reading to your toddler. Reading to your toddler strengthens the bond between you and allows him to feel secure. It's a positive, nurturing time that can be filled with laughter and silliness or sweetness and tenderness. And of course, sharing books continues to boost language development as your toddler acquires more vocabulary and learns the patterns of language through repetition, rhythm, and rhyme. As a toddler, your child is starting to put together connections in her mind about language. This happens when you engage with her using words. Talking and singing count too, but connecting using a book makes a powerful connection between the letters on the page and the sounds she hears. Reading aloud powers up your child's imagination too, which is great for making the most of play. How do you make the most of the time you spend reading with your wiggly little one? First of all, it's important to know that there is no one right way. If your child sits on your lap and soaks up the story, fine. But if your child looks at the book for a minute and wants to get up, that's fine too. Keep reading. And more often than not, his curiosity will lead him to come back around to see that book. Sing-song books or silly books like these, kind of a couple of my favorites, super silly stories, usually get them laughing, or books with their favorite things in them definitely have the most draw. So if they have a favorite show or a favorite character, use that. Find some books with that character in it. They'll definitely be engaged. This is also time to let yourself have some fun with the story. Use different voices for characters. So this is what I mean. Here's a book, I Am a Unicorn. And in the story, you have a unicorn and a sheep. So you would want to use different voices for the unicorn. I am a unicorn! Nope, you're not. So that there's definitely different character sounds in your voice. And if there's sound effects, whether they're already included in the story, like in this one, boing, instead of just saying boing, really put some energy in it. Boing! And even if they haven't written it out and you can see action, you can see a spot for a sound effect, throw it in there. There's nothing more fun for a kid than bringing a story to life like that. Really get into it, and you'll know you're on the right track when you hear them giggle. Children also love to hear the same story over and over again. And while it seems like you may never, ever want to read that one again, keep in mind that the repetition is a huge part of what helps your little one learn our language. At some point, she might just start telling you the story. You can also pause and ask your child what he thinks will happen next. For example, in a predictable story like The Three Little Pigs, maybe after you've done the first pig and the second pig, and then it's time for the third pig, and third pig builds his house out of bricks, and then the wolf comes along, you can say, what do you think will happen next? And hopefully your child will have learned, especially after having read it several times, that the wolf is going to come along and say, little pig, let me come in. And if they can't come up with that whole phrasing, you can also kind of give them the first part. Like you could say, little pig, and then you pause and let them fill in, let me come in. Or you could fill in, no, not by the hair on my chinny chin chin is what you hope your little one will say. And then, or you could do, then I'll, and then hopefully they'll say huff. And then you can say, and I'll, and they can fill in puff. And so you give them a chance to participate in creating that story with you. That's a really fun technique. Also take the opportunity to count something when it makes sense. It doesn't have to be a counting book to count something, but I love this one, Eric Carle's 10 Little Rubber Ducks. The illustrations are fun, and this is definitely a well-loved library copy. There's some wrinkled pages everywhere. When you come to a page like this, and there's 10 ducks, you can just count them together. And as you say the numbers, your child can join in. 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. It's also appropriate to point at pictures or listen for your child to point at pictures. So, for example, I've got another one marked here on this page. Maybe your child says, "There's a fish." And you can say, "Yes, that's a fish." And then you can add a little something to it and say, "That's a blue fish." Or you can take another opportunity and you can say, "Where's the duck? Show me the duck," and have your child point out the duck to build that comprehension and understanding of language. So those are all awesome techniques that you can use, and it is totally okay to use some old-fashioned classics. Those are really good for giving us background knowledge. That there's lots of little references to Little Pig stories all over the world in other books and movies and other stories. So understanding that story helps them get those things. But you can also find some of the great things that have been published recently, like the I Am a Unicorn story that's super duper fun. So definitely keep those things in mind. Explore new ones, reread old favorites. Just as long as you're reading, that's what really matters. Reading is also the perfect opportunity to help your toddler begin to understand how other people feel and to plant the seeds about the things your family values. You can read books, for example, that focus on nature if you're a nature lover, and you can build that love of the magic of the natural world by sharing a story about it. If your family is into art, there are amazing books with amazing illustrations. This one's even about art. It's about how art transformed in neighborhoods. It's based on a true story. Illustrations are fantastic. So if art is one of your things, you can try sharing a story like that, or a story that has wonderful musical instrument sounds in it if you're totally into music or something like that. You can use those. You can use literature to share values and ideas. You can also choose stories that have deep emotional connections in order for children to start being able to name and label the way they're feeling. If you see a sad character, for example, helping them understand that's what sad means, or that's what happy means, or that's what disappointed means. And a story is a fantastic way to do that. So there's so many stories, so many options, and it can be a lot of fun to poke around in a bookstore or click around online and find some great things to read. But I'd like you to remember that our local library has thousands of books, and you can borrow those, return them, get more, over and over and over again. Another thing to consider when you're thinking about reading with a toddler is that routines can help your toddler thrive. Knowing what is coming next helps make those transitions easier, and books can be a huge part of those routines. So if you always read a story before nap time or bed, that's a clear signal to your child that it's time to wind down. So you can choose an old classic, like something like The Snowy Day, or something that's newer, like Mommy's Khmar, or even one that's definitely about nighttime, like Touch the Brightest Star. Those could be some great stories for winding down. But if you have a little one who is hard to wake up, definitely consider using story as part of that routine. The transition from sleep into wake can be you can use books for that. So a fun sing-songy "You Are My Sunshine, My Only Sunshine" can be a great way to bring somebody back into the day. Or something that's a little animated, like this one called Peek a Tie, Hide and Seek. It's got some wonderful language and some of those sound effects that we were talking about. That can be a great way to energize your child. Or just even if you have some stories about morning, getting ready for the day, that can help make those transitions so much smoother and easier for your little one and for you. So books can also be a great distraction technique. More than once I can remember grabbing the silliest book I could find when my sons were seriously grumpy. And before long, they were laughing right along with me, and their upset moment was completely forgotten. So don't forget about the power of a story to do that. As your time together grows with reading, you will notice that your child will want to take charge of the book and maybe even pick it up upside down, or want to turn the pages backwards, or want to turn the pages. And that's okay. It's all part of the learning process. Don't worry about reading the whole book. Don't worry about missing a page or two. The goal is ultimately to have fun with it. It's more about reading together, reading with your child, than it is reading to them. The more they are involved and connected, the more they will get out of it. I hope these tips and tricks have helped you with reading with your toddler, and I wish you happy reading.